Hi guys, this is Hey Guys, and in this video we're going to talk about survival hunters. You might be asking yourself, why would I play a survival hunter? The answer? Instead of playing marksmanship and making fun of people for doing bad DPS, you get to say instead, wow, imagine losing in damage to a survival hunter. Without further ado, let's hop into how I feel about survival. The cons of survival hunter are very apparent. Not only are you melee, but you don't do any boss damage at all, but that'll take us right into the pros of this spec. You're going to be that pumper AoE DPS guy. And when I say pumper, I mean a true pumper. You're a non-cooldown reliant AoE god. You make unholy DKs jealous, and you'll make marksmanship hunters want to reroll. And even though I still say you aren't cooldown reliant, you still have access to wild spirits from Night Fae, which, and I'm not exaggerating, makes you better than every other DPS in the game for 20 seconds. I've prepared a handy dandy infographic to show us some pros and cons side by side. So, the pros for Survival Hunter are very apparent. Firstly, as mentioned before, you have extremely potent AoE while taking the same talents you normally would for single target. Survival also has lots of utility. Freezing Trap and Tar Trap for your trap choice. Wing Clip is a spammable slow that only costs 20 focus. Aspect of the Turtle is neat. And also, Survival has a shorter cooldown interrupt at 15 seconds compared to the 24 seconds of Marksmanship or Beast Mastery. There are only a few cons for Survival Hunter, and firstly, that would be that it's melee. I mean, who plays a hunter to be melee DPS, right? Just go play a rogue, you fucking idiot. It also lacks a lot of single target damage, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. It's really bad. You also experience this cool thing where groups kick you before the key starts for some reason. And speaking from experience, the scariest feeling as a survival hunter player is getting summoned and then just being targeted by the group leader. The next con is that it's not marksmanship. You also don't take Mongoose Bite currently, so you have to be careful not to fall asleep while mashing your Raptor Strike keybind. The last con is that it has to talent into Binding Shot, whereas marksmanship does not. For talents, we'll go through them together as a team, and we can discuss them all very briefly. The first row, we have Viper's Venom, Terms of Engagement, and Alpha Predator. Viper's Venom is bad with how bad our mastery scaling is, and how we have low haste as well. Terms of Engagement is good on paper, but it doesn't feel that great in practice. It is viable though. Alpha Predator is the default choice. More focus and more kill command damage is always nice. The second row, we have Guerrilla Tactics. In our third row, we have Trailblazer, Natural Mending, and Camouflage. Trailblazer is nice for old content, or if you're in a guild that wipes so much, you can just run back to the boss faster and flex on them all. Natural Mending is a good default choice. It will bump up your overall healing at a dungeon or raid fight by a nice amount. Camouflage is camouflage. If you want to be a rogue, you can just be a rogue. The fourth row, we have Bloodseeker, Steel Trap, and Murder of Crows. Currently, Bloodseeker is taken 99% of the time. Murder of Crows is never used. The thing you need to understand is Bloodseeker technically has AoE scaling with the bleed, and it naturally just does more damage than if you were to use Murder of Crows on cooldown with perfect usage. Steel Trap is only used if you make a legendary that we'll talk about later. Our fifth row has Born to be Wild, Post Haste, and Binding Shot. Yeah, Survival doesn't get fucking Binding Shot, and I'm upset too. Post Haste is the default talent that's taken in most situations. If your tank needs more help kiting, then Binding Shot can be taken instead. In the sixth row, we have Tip of the Spear, Mongoose Bite, and Flanking Strike. Mongoose Bite is currently not usable, as we cannot get enough haste to make it worthwhile. So, unfortunately, we'll be playing out Season 1 of the expansion without our core rotational ability. Instead, we talent into Tip of the Spear, which is just more damage on your filler. Flanking Strike is bad, and it should feel bad about itself. On our last row, we have Birds of Prey and Wildfire Infusion. Birds of Prey is only usable if you craft a specific legendary that synergizes well with Steel Trap. For every other situation in the game, you take Wildfire Infusion. It smooths out the rotation really nicely, and honestly, it makes the spec more fun to play. If you haven't played Survival before, this is probably going to be the part that you enjoy the most. Wildfire Infusion is fantastic. At this point, you might be hoping that this super fun spec will have a similar stat priority to Marksmanship. Ha ha ha, you fool! It's the exact opposite. As a survival hunter, the only stat that you ever care about is haste. Aside from that, your stat prio is pretty simple. If it has haste, you want it. If it has crit or verse as well, you're happy. If it has mastery, you should honestly start reconsidering your life choices because it's not great. It's really not great. In a perfect world, you would have 0 mastery. Mastery is bad, and it should feel bad about itself. We'll keep this short and sweet. Night Fae with Naya Soulbind is your best. If you picked Kyrian, you're fine, the spec will still play fine, and you should go down the Pelagos tree. That being said, Night Fae is the most damage that you can get, and damage is really the only thing that matters, let's be honest. As for conduits, you want one that either increases your Wild Spirit's damage, or the one that causes kill command resets to increase all of your damage. It has pretty good uptime. It's good. The bread and butter of so many classes. Legendaries. Survival Hunter has a couple different legendaries that are decent. Not good, but decent. For literally every single situation in the game, I recommend Wildfire Cluster. Rylax Stalkers is technically more single target, but really not by much. And Wildfire Cluster is really what makes the spec fun to play at all. And it also makes Unholy DKs feel insecure. So that's a bonus. Nessing Wherries is a good choice for pure single target. However, there are not very many of those currently in the raid. It might also require you to have more haste and Steel Trap to really pop off with it. I've decided to add an abilities section to explain your abilities to the best of my ability, because I'm sure most people watching this have absolutely no idea what Survival Hunter actually does. Its core spells are Raptor Strike, Wildfire Bomb, Kill Command, Serpent Sting, Kill Shot, and Carve. Raptor Strike is a simple focus spender with nothing interesting tied to it. Kill Command is a focus generator with a short cooldown, and it passively has a 25% chance to reset its own cooldown. Wildfire Bomb is personally my favorite spell in the game at the moment. It got a 25% damage buff in Shadowlands, and it has a legendary that basically just increases its damage even further. Wildfire Cluster. Serpent Sting is a basic dot that needs to be maintained, and Kill Shot is an execute. Carve is an interesting ability because on its own it does literally 0 damage. However, its usefulness comes in reducing the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb. For each target hit, it reduces the cooldown of your bomb by 1 second, but the ability is capped at 5 targets. These are our DPS abilities. As for our cooldowns, we have Coordinated Assault. This is a simple cooldown that just increases all of yours and your pet's damage by 20% for 20 seconds, and increases the chance that your kill command can reset by an additional 25%. If you've played Survival in a previous expansion, you'll notice some changes rather quickly. Firstly, the spec is melee now. Mongoose Bite is also weak, so your rotation has gone from thinking to button mashing, and its single target takes a hit because of it. Let's talk some specifics. On a single target, we follow a simple priority system. Number 1, cast Wildfire Bomb if you have 2 charges. Number 2, maintain Serpent Sting. Number 3, use Kill Shot when available. Number 4, Wildfire Bomb if you're about to reach 2 charges. Number 5, use Kill Command to keep from reaching 2 charges. And number 6, Raptor Strike to spend Focus. As for AoE, this is the best I can come up with for a priority system, but this is kind of a guideline, not gospel. Don't follow this exactly. Number 1, Wildfire Bomb if you have 2 charges. Start every AoE pull with this ability. Number 2, Carve to reduce the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb. Cast it on cooldown. Number 3, Kill Command should be cast on cooldown whenever it won't focus cap you. Number 4, Serpent Sting should be maintained on as many targets as you can, assuming the target lives for the entire duration. This is extra important because Wildfire Infusion has a green bomb that will refresh the duration of all of your active Serpent Stings. If you can get this with Serpent Sting on every mob, I don't even know how to describe the feeling that you'll feel, but it feels orgasmic. And then number 5 is just default to single target. I also want to mention that a lot of the time when I'm playing, I will usually just do my single target rotation, but also cast Carve on cooldown. At high enough haste values, during Bloodlust for example, your rotation could potentially turn into bomb, carve, bomb, carve, bomb, carve. And this is what dreams are made of. Last but not least, I'll cover a simple opener for you. Step 1 is Serpent Sting. Step 2 is press all of your cooldowns. Step 3 is Raptor Strike. And then you just play normally. As somewhat of a survival hunter connoisseur, I've got a few tips and tricks to help you get through keystones as a survival hunter yourself. Tip number 1, do your own key. You can't get kicked from groups that way. Tip number 2, generally speaking, you'll get more overall damage by popping your CDs on trash rather than bosses. And even if you pop CDs on a boss, you're not going to top the meter. It just doesn't happen. I'm sorry. Tip number 3, between Muzzle, Intimidation, and Freezing Trap, you can lock down a mob or prevent it from casting for a long time by yourself. Tip number 4, some tank busting mobs, like the Stitchworks in Necrotic Wake, can be taunted by your pet to clear the tank's stacks, thus enabling bigger pulls. Tip number 5, Spires of Ascension drops 2 pole arms if you don't have a weapon yet for some reason. Just get better RNG. It's just that simple. Tip number 6, please, for the love of God, learn what mobs you need to interrupt. This is your greatest tool. When you play a spec like Survival Hunter, people are going to look for any reason or excuse they can to blame you. If you're doing everything to the best of your ability, they don't have any ammunition. Don't give them any ammunition to flame the fuck out of you. To do things a little bit differently this time around, we're going to go into an interview with another fellow survival hunter god, Hi Girls. Hi guys, this is Hey Guys, and today I'm here with Hi Girls with some important survival hunter questions. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Hi Girls. My other character's name is Uwuther, the Lightbringer. I play Protection Paladin as well as a little bit of Survival Hunter. In Shadowlands, I played mostly Rogue up until here. So all through, when I started the game in Wrath of the Lich King through Battle for Azeroth, I was playing Sub Rogue. A little bit about myself, I guess. I've had mild success in PvE and PvP as well. I've achieved 2400 rating as well as I think like 3500 raider IO.
First question for you is why Survival Hunter?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thank you for asking. So for the first one, I guess, so we see a lot of really strong range damage dealers in the game's current meta, and this includes things like your Balanced Druid and Fire Mage and Shadow Priest, but the really choices for hunters is expansion is really lackluster. In PvE anyway. In PvP, we see a really strong burst capability from Marksman Hunter with Double Tap True Shot. That combo aligned with the Kyrian ability lets them one-shot people through the wall, which I think is really fair for the game. But when we translate that to a PvE scenario, we lose a lot of huge value because the mob health is sometimes, 10 times greater than the health of a player. So that damage value seems to fall off a lot. But the really great thing about survival is that they have an uncapped AoE potential and basically zero downtime in their rotation. So translating into a PvE scenario, especially in Mythic Plus, where they're really able to shine, we really don't see a lot of the weaknesses that their range counterparts in BM and Marksman have.
Knowing that I forced you to play Survival Hunter, are there any tips that you could give to new players that you didn't immediately get right away?
Yeah, so in BFA, I was forced to play survival. I mean, I got the opportunity to play Survival Hunter for a week straight after losing a bet. One of the things I didn't know about the class going into it was just how complex and high, I guess, IPM or APM the spec demanded from the player. So one of the things that I wish that I had known earlier is just that I would need wrist straps for like carpal tunnel. That would really help, I think, solidify your top spot at the top of the DPS meter. Also, I knew of your channel, and I think that I had helped you with a video currently before or previously, I guess. So I didn't really have a chance to pay attention to any of those videos. So I think my biggest tip for new players coming into the game would be to make sure you're just paying attention to all the resources you have available, especially the Hunter Pet Guide. Um, that one's a really great one as well.
How does it feel to be the number 2 ranked survival hunter for IO score and the first 25 survival hunters to kill normal Denathrios?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So currently on our server, we have a lot of really skilled players, and the competition is really fierce. So top 100 has always been a dream of mine on any class that I play. So being able to obtain that second rating for IO in such a short amount of time of playing the class really speaks to me in the sense that I feel like I was born to play this spec. And then also with the top 25 on a end boss in the raid and current like the end game, I guess is what I'm starting to say is it feels really great.
What's your favorite part about Survival Hunter?
Um, Mongoose Bite.
Now, I know that this is currently your alt, but how likely are you to main swap after the release of this guide?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what my group needs, honestly. But honestly, I'd like to say it's very likely. As we touched on earlier, there's not really a weakness for survival, and it really allows me to fully develop and incorporate a diverse play style of mechanics and then huge damage output into my gameplay. And I really enjoy being able to make or break your key, so to speak. So I think that survival has that huge potential to be the biggest wildcard factor on whether or not your group can time a key. So it's more so than my current role as tank, I guess. So I'd say pretty likely.
Good to hear, good to hear.
Yeah.
Knowing that you tank for me in Mythic Plus, what's your favorite part about playing with a survival hunter?
Yeah, I really like. There's a lot of aspects about the game that I like playing with Survival Hunter. But I guess the biggest thing is I'm really required to adjust my play style and stand still in a meta that requires really heavy tank movement and kiting. So it really challenges me to, think outside the box and use every cooldown that I have available in my kit on smaller trash packs so that my Hunter's Wild Spirits can push into top 3 on the damage meter in the dungeon. Yeah,
If you could choose one talent to go baseline, what would it be?
Mongoose Bite.
Nice.
Yeah.
To conclude this video, all I need everyone to understand is that survival is not a bad spec by any means. Generally speaking, I usually top the meter as survival in most Mythic Plus groups that I'm in, while also having just as much utility as any other class or more. As a melee spec, you aren't really punished that hard for having to move to range, as all of your abilities have a 40-yard range except for Raptor Strike, which has a cooldown to make it a 40-yard range for 15 seconds. The spec is probably worse than marksmanship in the absolute highest level of content, but for your average player, you're going to do just fine, and maybe even have more fun. Playing in melee with a pet while also being a non-cooldown reliant spec feels super nice. It feels like you always have a tool for every situation you could possibly be put into. That's why I play Survival Hunter. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed or at least learned something new. If you want to see more of me, I stream sometimes at twitch.tv/lrgotmilk, and I plan to upload more Mythic Plus POVs of keys that I run. Subscribe if you liked the video, and I cannot stress enough how much it means to me if you made it to the end of the video. You're awesome, and thank you for watching.